Thank you. Welcome to the May 17th, 2023 Finance Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee. We're going to go through some of the administrative business that we have in front of us. First item on the agenda is approval of the March 15th and March 29th, 2023 minutes of the subcommittee. Can I get a motion for approval?
Sure.
Suzanne, thank you. And Nancy, I'll take your hand as a second. Andy, how do you vote? Yes. Nancy?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is acceptance of gifts and grants. We have a very long list for gifts, which is wonderful. Many of them are for, they're all for the high school. Nope, yet they're all for the high school for 3 different programs. One is for the Queer Student Union, one is for the boys volleyball team. I should say a series of them are for the Queer Student Union, a series of them are for the boys volleyball team, and then a gift for the African American and Latino Scholars Program. It's very wonderful to see the gifts that are coming in to support these, and thank you to people who gave those gifts. And can I get a motion for approval of the gifts? Andy, thank you. And Nancy, I'll take yours as a second. Suzanne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes, thank you.
And I vote yes. Can I vote yes? I gave a gift. I think I can vote yes, right?
I think so.
No? Okay, then I abstain.
No?
No, I think you can.
No, because you can't vote something that's your own money or that you benefit from in some way.
Okay.
So does that mean that you can't vote any if any of that was yours? Do you know what I mean?
Apparently.
I
Yeah,
get
Because
it.
it's a
that's fine.
separate vote, no?
It's fine. It doesn't matter. I'm abstaining and it still passes, so it's fine.
Yep. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is acceptance of grants. And there are 3 grants on the acceptance memo. The first one is for Project Here, which if I recall correctly, has to do with substance abuse. I believe, yep, substance abuse. The second one is METCO funding for special education. And the third one is an SEL program from the state, if I recall correctly. Yes, the state. And does anyone have any questions or comments on any of those? I have a comment I'm going to make, but I want to leave it open to any questions or comments. Okay, my comment is I was really excited about they're all wonderful, but I was particularly excited about the state funding because if you look on the cover sheet, a large portion of the state grant is going to be used for it's a service called Cartwheel Care. And Cartwheel Care provides rapid mental health access for students who need it. And so I'm sure everyone's heard that it's so difficult, if you haven't experienced this yourself, so difficult to book appointments and to get access into mental health right now. And so this is a program that's specialized in offering that those services. And I had several months ago heard that Salem had contracted with Cartwheel Care, and I'd asked Lisa about it, like, wow, this seems really great. And she said, yes, we're working on it. So it's really exciting to see that that is now something that we'll be able to offer students who need that and aren't able to access resources through other venues. So so thanks to the staff for doing the work to get these grants, and that one in particular is exciting. Any motion? Can I get a motion for acceptance? Thank you, Nancy. Andy, I'm taking yours as a second. Suzanne, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes, thank you.
And I vote yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is FY23 quarterly report. Is Linus here yet? He's not. I think we're going to forge ahead without him, and hopefully he'll get here soon. I thought I saw Ruth. Oh yeah, there. Ruth, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful.
So I can share my screen, hopefully. 1 second. No. Yes.
Would you like me to try to share it? Oh, there you
Nope,
go.
there we go.
Okay.
So actually, this is like the third quarter and a half report. It's actually as of the 14th. I've gone through and I've done the projections based on everything expended through that date and moving forward. So similar to the second quarterly report, the chart that follows the memo reflects just the actual budget amounts. So it's consistent with what was in the budget book, but I have also been able to go ahead and update the grants and the revolving accounts for the committee. So there's an understanding of just exactly how much money is being expended on behalf of education. So in doing the review, I've found that we're actually projecting a surplus at the end of this year. Part of the surplus is from the vacancies that existed in the key leadership positions. We are using slightly lower amount in our special, in our tuition, not our tuition, I'm sorry, in our substitute teaching account. And then I'm projecting approximately $1 million surplus in the out-of-district tuition account. But we will be moving a significant portion of that to cover deficits in the special transportation account and also in parent settlements. So just, I'm going to kind of scroll through the memo. The ESSER money we have reconciled. It appears as if we still are waiting for some ESSER 2 revenue to come in. It either has not yet been requested or it's not posted yet by the town. So once that comes in, when you see the second sheet with the update for the grants and the revolving accounts, you'll see that there's currently a negative fund balance, but that's because the revolving accounts, the special revenue accounts are reported on a cash basis. So I don't know if you want me to go through the whole memo. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to see this.
I think it would be great, especially since maybe not everyone got the chance to, and we also have some attendees who wouldn't have gotten the chance to see it in advance. If you don't mind just taking the time to go through it.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Scroll back up a little bit. As I said, except for on the following chart, except for the funds that were appropriated at the fall town meeting, the additional funds, the budget amounts reflect what was in the FY23 budget book for the different accounts for the ESSER, materials fee, circuit breaker. So as I said, I'm planning, we're looking at an approximately $1 million surplus in the out-of-district tuition account. And that transfer that I just mentioned will be for the special transportation and the special education settlements. I would recommend at this point, Mariah, you probably remember this from last fall, we had a conversation with Fong that she was hoping to have some of the money that was reduced from her budget over 2 years because of the pandemic. And I would like to recommend that a portion of the surplus that I'm projecting be allocated to her so she can in fact kind of catch up with those purchases that she's had to delay. And I had a conversation with her yesterday and she's projecting that it'd be about 128,000.
Ruth, remind me, this is for the projectors that we had talked about, but then didn't end up in the budget. Am I correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. This is for the
Yeah.
projectors.
And
she-
do we, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
My only question was, I believe it's correct that school committee doesn't actually need to authorize that's a decision on the staff side to do that, or do we actually need to authorize that?
No, the school committee doesn't need to authorize that, but I just would want the school committee to be aware that we would be moving that money from, because this year in FY23, and again, now moving forward, budgets, each individual program budget manager has what's called a roll-up code so that they cannot overspend the bottom line. So we would just be moving money into Fong's bottom line. So she has those funds available for her to spend.
And has she said that she could spend that money in this fiscal year? Like, can she actually put in the POs to expend it?
I had that. She was concerned about that. And I said, as long as the purchase orders are in, the money can be accrued and carried
Okay.
forward.
So it'll be encumbered essentially.
It'll be encumbered. And she did say that Karen King, who works with her, had already had some information pulled together. Because I had been having conversations with her earlier in the year with the hope that we would be able to do that.
Helen? Thank you,
Helen?
Ruth.
I seem to remember, and this may be changed, I don't know, that when budget items went from one account to, a different area, and we had divided them up, personnel, I forget all the different areas, above, $5,000 or $10,000, the finance subcommittee and the school committee would approve that. Just to be aware when things were moving from one line to another line, to another grouping. Has that changed?
I think you're technically correct that that's in the policy.
That's-
However, I don't think that we've actually done that, and we're in the middle of revamping the policy, and I don't think it's a bad practice, but we haven't done it. So
Right, and it was
Yeah.
split up into different areas so that within areas, like special ed, that's not
well,
something.
that was part of the question that we didn't, when we had this discussion about finance and policy last year, the question was, for example, what was the right level of granularity by which, like, for example, was it like from personnel to supplies? That felt really like that felt non-specific. But then if we got down into, like, I don't know, cell phones to land, I'm just trying to think of something very granular. Like, so what was the,
Yeah,
and so the request at that point was for staff to propose a level at which they sort of, a recommendation of when school committee should authorize, more or less what Ruth is doing now, where she really wants to raise it and get a go ahead.
correct.
But it hadn't been resolved, and we do need to resolve that. It's in the list of things to sort out.
And there was a grid, I remember at one point, that did lay out some of those things. And certainly the special ed funds should stay within special ed, because there's, I imagine, circuit breaker funding. Is that correct, Ruth?
Yes, circuit breaker funding is basically a restricted fund. There are only certain things on which that money can be expended.
Right.
Just Helen, in other districts where I have worked, school committee actually votes a line item budget. So they'll vote a budget for personal services or salaries, different terminology here, and then they'll vote an operations budget, an administration's budget, and a budget for special education costs. So the overall budget is broken down into categories. And in those districts, if we wanted to move something from, say, the instructional budget, which I left that out, if there was a surplus and we wanted to move those funds into the operations budget for whatever reason we might have had, that would be proposed to school committee, and it would be voted over two readings. There would be the initial reading, and then the next meeting, the school committee would make the following vote. So
Well, maybe now that Susan is here, Susan Gibbons, I think, maybe you guys can work on that, Mariah, and figure out what's the best
Yeah.
way to do that.
Again, it was in the part of the discussion we had that is frozen in time, and we will need to revisit. So,
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Ruth. Sorry.
So that talks about the transferring of the funds, as I said, to this part of the surplus into Fong's budget so that she can in fact make those purchases, or at least encumber those funds and start to move forward. And then, as I said, I have in fact included now the special revenue funds, which I had hoped to do at the end of the second quarter. But at that point in time, this town, because of their turnover in both the treasurer's and the comptroller's office, they were behind in posting some of those revenues. Now they've caught up. They're the only one that is still in question is there's an issue with the revenue that's been posted to the bus transportation account. And it's nice that they found a home there, but it clearly doesn't belong there. So I did not on the attached document include those funds in there, and I still have to work with the town treasurer to figure out exactly where they go. And then this is just a reminder of what in the categories, the types of things that appear in the different categories that follow on the next page. So we'll just scroll down now and whoops. So as I said, this is as of May 14th. So it's a little bit more than the third quarter, and actually it's more accurate for projecting where we're headed. So
Can I ask you a question, Ruth, before this goes back to something you said earlier?
sure.
So you are operating on the November special town meeting total operating budget of the 125.6. Is that, because I see that there, you had said that you didn't, but I see it on the first
No, I said
column.
with this, I said the only budget adjustment that has been made was the additional funds through the special town meeting in November. So the school committee operating budget reflects that additional 514,995. But the ARPA money, which didn't change, ESSER, circuit breaker, and materials fees, those are the amounts that appeared in the FY23 budget book. So I did not change those amounts, and that's for consistency. So the amended budget, and it's actually noted down here a little bit farther, that it was the only change was in this, it was reflective of what was the additional appropriation from the special town meeting or the fall town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So our salary budget, our personnel expense, we're almost through with the year. So you can see that what we have already expended and what our balance is, and I can't scroll over. I'm projecting this for the balance of the year. That's for our regular payrolls, and it's for the payrolls that we will accrue for things that get paid only once a year at the end of the year, such as the vacation and sick accrual buyouts that are in the secretary's food services and custodial contracts, and also some of our non-aligned staff have those buyouts. So there is a surplus in that line item, which I unfortunately can't seem to move my screen over for you to see. I'm sorry, can't seem to manage the screen over. And then you have the individual non-salary expense line items. We have our outside services and contracts, and this is where you see the projected additional expense, which are for the SPED as parent settlements, and also for our special transportation. So that's the additional expense that I'm projecting there. Under the supplies and materials, I'm projecting an additional 150K. This is basically, at this point in the year, the purchase orders have been cut off unless there's an emergency purchase that needs to be made. This is for those stragglers that will come in, or for things that are purchased on the credit cards. And even though the state law is clear that any purchase to be made, even if it's on a credit card, needs to be encumbered in advance so that we can verify the availability of funds and the appropriateness of the expenditure. That doesn't always happen. And so I'm putting that cushion in there to make sure that we cover that. Under the other expenses, that, as I mentioned in the memo, I didn't mention it when I was going through the memo, this is for the additional treble damages from last summer's payroll. So we are in the process of slowly paying those out. The individuals who are eligible for that had to sign a form. And so some of those have already been signed, and we've gotten a small number of those out. And the BEU is actually collecting for the majority of their members, and will give it to us all at one point in time. And I'm just going to scroll down. It's the bottom line on the school committee appropriation. And you can see that there's projecting at this point a fairly comfortable surplus. Then we have the ARPA money, which was the separate money. Most of that has been expended to date or encumbered. Tiny amount left that will will be used before the end of the year. Then our ESSER money, and again, even though it appears that we've overexpended, we had ESSER money left at the end of FY22 that we were able to bring forward. But I'm only showing the budget amount here, so it's a picture of the budget to the actuals.
Can you remind us what the carried, is it the 1.818 number that was carried over?
No, because the amount that got carried, so this is just
Should say the 800,000.
It's, well, as we get down, you'll see what was carried over, but part of the problem with the carryover is that in prior years, for any of the grants, the budget only reflected the salary portion. It didn't reflect the supply portion. So, and as I said, we'll scroll down to there and you can see what the carryover was. So the carryover includes the salary portion that was surplus, plus there were some supply monies that was also available that we're in the process of actually expending out. The circuit breaker is right on target with what we anticipated in the budget, but but the budget was built on the known number, because for circuit breaker, that number is based on what we are actually getting reimbursed in FY 23, but it's for FY 22 costs, and we know that at the time the budget is being built. And then the materials fee that were assumed there was going to be 500,000 expended, and we will spend 500,000. So are there any questions on that so far?
I have questions.
Sure.
And I need to apologize because I had a really busy day at work, so I didn't get the chance to read past the memo. So some of my questions may be answered in a moment. But for the ESSER funds, which are multi-year funds, and I think we have another year, 14 months, 15 months, 16 months left to expend them. If there is a balance, can we shift funds to like can we charge the things that were charged to ESSER back to the operating budget?
You can, but I have to double check on how I have to double check on what the ESSER 3 money we have expended in full. The money that the money that is still available.
Why didn't we start at the lower number ESSERs and work our way up?
That was before my time. But the ESSER 3 money is expended in full, and the ESSER 2 salary portion of the ESSER 2 has been expended in full. There is, as I said, a small amount of ESSER 2 money left in expenses that I know. I've had conversations with Linus on it, and he has spoken to Grace, and they are in the process of spending that down.
Thank you, Ruth.
So the next portion, this is just like a narrative summary explaining the little surpluses that are up in the upper corner, and it just details, again, most of this information is in the memo on the front. Again, I talk about that we are showing only for ESSER materials fee and circuit breaker the amounts that were in the original budget for FY 23. The only adjustment to the budget has been made for this fall town meeting amount that was increased. The special, the out of district tuition of the projected $1 million surplus will be divided between special transportation, which you can see here is approximately $545,000, and the parent sped settlements. And part of that is because when the budget for FY 23 was built, they did not include the line item for the parent settlements. It was just all folded into the special tuition account. But for purposes of being in compliance with what we have to report to the Department of Ed, they're two very different things, and they have to be reported and recorded differently. So that's why there's the need to make that transfer. We're tracking that more closely, and we've actually built money into the FY 24 budget for those settlements. So I'm just going to go down here. So this is a recap of our special revenue funds. And I've started with the ESSER money. So this was the fund balance at the beginning, at the end of FY 22. So it's actually our starting point. Now, remember, this fund balance is a cash basis, not what we actually, so at the end of FY 22, this is where we stood in terms of the funds we had received for the different ESSER grants. To date, this is what we've received. This is what was available as of now, what we've expended, encumbered, and then the final column all the way over, again, which I can't seem to get to, shows the fund balance as of the 14th. So I've
Ruth,
done
on the document that you gave us like this, that was the FY 22 version of this. I thought there was an additional column right before right after encumbered, which would reflect like anticipated future allotments, or I don't remember what the exact wording was. Do you remember what I'm talking about? How we added in?
Yeah, I vaguely recall, Mariah, but I mean, right off the top of my head, I can't recall what was in there, to be honest with you.
I guess my question is, are there expected, like you mentioned earlier, that there is future money?
Well,
in two, maybe? I guess I'm just wondering, are we expecting more ESSER funds to come in?
we have not received all of the ESSER funds that we were given. And so the way that the grants work is that you have to request the funds. There's only a certain window that the state provides, only a certain each month where you can go in and request those funds. And so there are funds for ESSER two, which we have yet to receive. And
Have we
also,
requested them?
that I'll have to double check on, because that actually comes up from it does that the grants are sort of split up between different people in the area, and I believe that comes from Kelly Durgan, the ESSER money, and I'll have to double check. I'm assuming that she has requested them, but I can't say that for 100% certainty.
Okay, it would be great if you did, just to be sure that we're not letting something slip by accident.
Yeah, no, we definitely can't do that, and we want to be sure we expend all of our grant money, because we don't want to be sending grant money back.
Andy?
Could I just ask what the METCO targeted PAC grant is?
I'll have to get back to you with the more specifics on that, Andy, because I don't know 100%. There's been some additional METCO funding this year and last year. No, yes, started last year, this year as well. And
We had approved that one, I thought. Anna, didn't we approve that one? And so there should be something in Andy's packet for that? Like a previous packet?
yes, yeah, the school
think it
committee
might
approves all
be-
of the grants.
Yeah,
Yeah, previously, yes, it went before the committee.
I think it was in November, Andy. Yes, it was in November. If
Okay,
you want to go back and look at the details, unless you want me to go through it now, but we
no,
did get details in November.
okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So again, this is a recap of all of our grants. The ones that you see that have a FY22 fund balance, most of those are continuing grants. Some of them are entitlement grants that we receive every year, and we still have to go through the process of submitting a grant application and request the funds. But we are given an allotment, so we're not basically competing for that. We're told this is what you're awarded. And so a lot of these grants up here where you see that these are continuing, like the title grants, the IDEA, the ARPA IDEA was fairly new last year, I believe, and I think this might be just the last year of that. But to the early childhood, again, those are continuing grants. And then we get down to the state funds, which we have our circuit breaker. We had a balance from last year that we carried forward. Now with circuit breaker, you're only allowed to carry that. You have to spend that money within a 2-year period of time. So any grant, any circuit breaker funds received in FY21 have to be fully expended. But again, the way Brookline has been spending the money, they appropriate it for the following fiscal year and actually expend it in full. So we're not running into any issues with that. And then we'll get down here into, oops, some of our private grants that are there. And again, some of these are continuing grants that continue from year to year. The Innovation Fund has been happening for several years. The Craft Opportunity Fund grant that was given specifically to the class of 2023. So I have to get a hold of Anthony and make sure that gets expended, or that they have gotten whatever permission they need to do to carry that forward, to do something with the class of 2023. And then finally, we have our revolving funds, our food service account, BEEP, base, the adult ed, summer school. And as I said, I highlighted in blue the bus transportation, because the balance forward is the balance forward that we had on the books as of the end of the fiscal year. But because of some of the late postings, there is a money amount in there. Well north of $70,000 that you definitely know does not belong there. So I'll have to reconcile that.
Ruth, on food services, do you mind just going up? Yeah. So we started the year at $1.2 million net positive, and I don't know where exactly we're going to end up, but it looks like we're going to if all things hold equal, we'll have significantly reduced that balance. Do you have any sense of what's going on in food services? I mean, it's been wonderful to be net positive over the past couple of years, but I'm just wondering what that might, if there's any implications of the fact that we went from almost 1.3 million in the fund balance to currently 680,000.
Well, what I'll have to do for you, Mariah, is check where we stand in terms of getting our reimbursements.
Oh, okay. Because it could be that there's reimbursements pending. Okay.
Right, and more likely than not, that is the case. Again, we have to submit documentation for that, and they have a tendency to lag. And that's historic with them. They lag, and then in June, you'll get like 3 or 4 payments all at one time.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I'll double.
I know
check.
we had talked, if you recall, remember we were going to look at the impact of the change in food services balance on the offering the free and reduced lunch for all food products. And so maybe it's an opportunity just to get everything in one topic as opposed to, right, like when we get to the end of the year. Okay.
Sure.
Thanks. Andy?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the significance of the base numbers. So it looks like, it ended last year about $500,000, but with about $500,000 in hand. And so far there continues to be a positive balance. Is that likely to continue to the end of the year? I ask simply because we're taking a series of decisions about base kind of under the idea that it's still very shaky financially and we need to sort of defer a lot of things until it's less shaky. And I'm just wondering sort of what do these numbers say about their overall financial picture?
So for base, it ended with a nice balance last year, primarily because Sam had made the decision to journalize some of the base expenditures from their revolving account into the operating account at the close of the fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the exact amount of that transfer, but it was pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we as school committee agreed to like 200,000.
It might have been 200, but I think actually it was slightly more. I can't say right now for certainty how much it was, but there was a transfer to sort of help base along. I have talked to Michelle, and I've done some original earlier projections for her based on her staffing and what she's projecting for revenue. And I'm at this point, it appears that they will end the year with a positive fund balance. But right now, when I did that, I say I did it about a month ago, they are actually operating in a deficit situation. So I made some suggestions to her about, seeing if she could find somebody who might be willing to print their catalogs at a lower cost, or maybe even do it as a donation to the program, print the catalogs for free. So I've given her some recommendations, but I do have some concerns that they'll be able to sustain the program without doing something different in terms of their costs.
When you're talking about the deficit situation, you mean that for FY23, the expenditures are going to exceed the revenue. And so there might continue to be a positive fund balance simply because that was carried over from before.
Right. So I'm projecting that there will be a positive fund balance based on the information that she provided.
But a deficit for this fiscal year.
Right. And the fund balance will be smaller than obviously what was carried forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
The other thing, Andy, to remember is that they take in revenues in the spring for summer programming. And so there's the balance itself doesn't reflect the future liability that they've incurred. So
that's why I was asking, kind of wondering how much of that will survive the summer. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. And then the finals is, here's the rest of us. These are some of the smaller revolving accounts we have, the fees that the school committee has voted for the various programs. We have a couple of gift accounts there that are not significant in terms of dollar amounts right now. And then the final thing is just a recap of the funds that are currently being projected to be either have already been expended and or encumbered or projected for the balance of the year for school the educational program in Brookline from the various sources. And so again, I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to move my thing over with the staff. So right now, it appears that the grand total is going to be slightly more than $142 million.
Thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome.
Members of the committee have other questions? Go ahead, Suzanne.
I know I should have said this when it was up. I was noticing on building use fees, that is a negative at the end of the year. Is that, are those the like after school programs and base and that, is that what's included in that?
Let me reshare that.
I'm sorry. It was
Nope, no problem.
quick enough.
Um,
Yeah, it's up one, yeah.
yeah.
Use of building.
Just need to find it here. Here it is. And again, part of that is the invoices have gone out, but we're still expecting some funds in on the use of building. We are charging some salaries to that account currently. I think 4.5 custodial staff are charged to that account. I had a email conversation back and forth with Matt, and he projects that there'll be approximately, I want to say 150K that he anticipated would be coming in between the beginning of May and the end of June.
So the fund balance, oh, that's to date.
Yes, that's to date, because this is
Okay.
all
Yep.
the revolving accounts and the grant accounts are reported on a cash basis, which is
Gotcha.
consistent with school committee. I mean, not school committee, Department of Ed.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Ruth, if those funds don't materialize, the good news is there is space in the operating budget to pick up the custodial salaries as needed, correct?
Correct.
Other questions from members of the committee or other members of school committee? David, and then we'll go back to you, Susan.
Yes, just the line on industrial art supplies. I see that there's a very small amount that's been collected, and I'm wondering if that just has to do with the date of when collection generally occurs. Is there an expectation that that will be balanced?
That was a 0 for this year, David. That's old funds, right, Ruth? That's just been sitting there in that account. Yeah.
Yes, there are a couple of these accounts that are old funds that have been sitting for a while and should probably just be spent out. And then if you're not going to charge fees for industrial arts anymore, just close the fund out.
David, we've talked about that. That's part of the other like pending finance things is cleaning up some of these other accounts.
All right, so there'll be a recommendation at some point to close out some of these accounts?
Yeah, we talked about some of them need to be renamed and some of them need to be closed. But
Okay.
everything's been parked. Yeah. Any more questions, David, or can I go to Suzanne? Oh, okay,
Nope,
great.
that was
Go
all.
ahead. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks. It's not a question. I just want to say thanks to Ruth. I mean, this is such a better place than we have been in the past around May when we're in a panic. And so thank you, Ruth, for making this very clear and for doing the great job of making the money work. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, Suzanne, for saying that, and thank you, Ruth, as well. Okay, that's really helpful. I have one last question that was just on the budget, on the freeze, Ruth, that you mentioned, like basically that there's 150,000 for materials and supplies. But in my mind, and I'm just curious to hear your comment on it, this is not equivalent to the budget freezes we had in previous years. This is essentially just at the end of the year, you don't have a big need to spend at this point, as opposed to.
Yeah,
Those-
this is not a freeze because we're having financial issues. This is a freeze because we have a legal obligation to get everything cleaned up and close out as many purchase orders as we can and get the bills paid. before the end of the fiscal year. And at this
People
point
who
in the
need
year-
stuff can buy it.
Pardon
Like if
me?
you, but people who need stuff can buy it. It's not like we're in a freeze. Okay.
Right, no. If there's definitely a need, but at this point in the year, most people have planned, they know what they need in order to get between now and the end of June, and they've already made those purchases.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think unless there's any other questions, we'll go on to FY24 budget update. Before we do, Susan, do you want to introduce yourself? I know you did briefly somewhere else. I can't remember. Oh, that was at Town School Partnership, but it'd be great to have you introduce yourself.
Hello, can you see me and hear me? I don't know.
Yes.
I've got my new laptop and I haven't quite got everything set up in a way that I can see if everything's working properly. So yes, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ruth. That was helpful for me to be able to get a sense of where we are for FY23 and, you know, some previews into the closing of this year and what the implications might be for the upcoming year. So thank you very much for all your hard work. I know firsthand how difficult it is to do this. I would even argue impossible to do this on a part-time basis, especially without a finance director and other vacancies in the office. So my hat goes off to you. So yes, hello, everyone. I'm not sure that I have any new people in the room that I haven't run into.
We have members of advisory committee who are here, so they may not have met you before.
Okay. Hello. Well, hello. My name is Susan Givens, and I will be coming on board full-time July 1, though I am spending, you know, a few days a week here between now and then, trying to get things kind of queued up for FY24 and stay out of Ruth's way, because I certainly don't want to slow her down in getting all the work done that needs to be done this year. So I've met a lot of people. I don't know that I'll remember everybody's name initially, but I'm very much looking forward to coming in and working with you all to see how we can improve learning outcomes for kids and make this a more efficient and effective operational side for everyone moving forward. So
Thank you. That's great. Linus, do you want to take the FY24 budget update? That's you, correct?
Sure thing. That's just pulling up the motion, that piece.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So do you want to talk to it, or do you want me to talk to it? What you're
I can talk to it,
Okay.
and you can fill in pieces that I miss here. Let me try to do this without closing down the presentation. So good evening, everyone. Great to see all of you, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We are moving right along swiftly through our budgeting process. And again, I want to echo the sentiments that Susan shared regarding Ruth and her work. So a huge, again, shout out to Ruth for shepherding us through this process this year, as well as the committee's support. And certainly a big thank you to the Brookline community for their support in both the debt exclusion override as well as the operating override. So where we presently stand now in the budgeting process is we are in this early to mid-May range where town meeting starts next week. And there will be, again, the votes on the final appropriations for schools. June, we will take to make further refinement if needed, and then certainly the FY24 fiscal year begins in July 1. So just again, a quick recap and of where our journey this school year. The FY24 superintendent's budget request came in at $864,685. We have made programmatic adjustments to the tune of 1.85 million. We have enhancements or improvements to the organization in both athletics and student services to the tune of 375,000. Associated costs with the South Brookline bus at 200,000. World language redesigned placeholder at 115,000. And this final town adjustment, there is a discrepancy of $2,309, and Melissa, Ruth, and I checked in earlier today regarding this. We think that when the town was making the initial reductions to the appropriation, that we got double dinged on this. So we wanted to note that here, because this is our understanding of what the select board has put forward as our budget appropriation of $130,702,376. So we wanted to note this here for consideration. And Melissa's going to check our numbers, and if this discrepancy holds true, we will have these funds added back through our normal budgeting adjustment processes. But I wanted folks to be aware of that change because it was different from the 704. What was it, Ruth? I don't have it written in front of me.
Must be 685. Just based on the math.
685, yeah. So, and then what we would be asking the committee, or this committee first and then full committee, move to approve the town meeting appropriation requests voted by the select board on May 9th of $130,702,376 for the public schools of Brookline. And Mariah, I will pass the mic back to you.
Sure. But Helen, before we ask your question, I just want to make sure everyone, unless your question is about this, I want to make sure that the $2,000 difference is clear to everyone as to what's going on. Is there anyone for whom they have any questions about the $2,000, which is the only sort of new thing that's out here? Okay, Helen, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, does this number include any of the additional monies that the House appropriated through their Ways and Means?
Ruth, you want to talk about that, because we discussed that earlier too.
And do we know how much that is?
So I had a conversation with both Charlie Young and Melissa today, and they are moving forward with the initial proposal that was in the governor's budget, which had a $30 per pupil funding level. Both the House and the Senate budget have proposed an increase of doubling, basically, from the 30 to 60. But Melissa said that they are not going to move forward with that at this point, that any adjustments that will, however that vote comes out and when the budget is finalized, which will probably be in early July, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, that those adjustments will be made for the fall town meeting. And she said that's the typical way that the town has handled it in the past.
So are you saying the Senate has also voted it?
The Senate's budget that came out, and I can't remember when I saw it, if it was last week or the week before.
Ruth, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Senate budget came out earlier last week, Helen, and it includes the 60 as well. And because there's no difference in what the House voted and what is likely to be voted on the Senate side that came out in Senate Ways and Means, they're voting next week. That means it will be non-conferenceable. So that will be the number that goes to the governor for signature. So it would be highly unusual for the governor to veto that higher number.
Thank you.
The overall difference, we talked about this at Town School Partnership the other day, and I thought that the net difference was, possibly, correct me anyone who was there who misremembers, it was about $200,000 net increase. Okay, I see you nodding. So it's a favorable outcome, but it's not dramatic in the overall scheme of things. Val, is your hand still up, or is that an old hand?
Old hand, sorry.
Old hand, okay. other questions or comments about this? And so the idea we were thinking was that the subcommittee could vote to recommend this to the full school committee for tomorrow night, just to sort of smooth the path for tomorrow night. So is anyone willing to make a motion to recommend full school committee adopt the language as shown on the screen?
I can move that.
Okay, Suzanne, I'll take your hand as a second, if that's accurate. Okay. Suzanne, how do you vote?
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, great. And thank you, Linus, for pulling that up. And I believe that that is everything on our agenda for tonight. Unless anyone else has any old or new business they would like to bring up. Cliff, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Oh, hold on a second. Thanks, Mariah. While I have, before I speak, I want to also express my own thanks to Ruth for the work that she's done over the last period of time. I know it's been a little bit challenging stepping in, but we really appreciate it. And welcome to Susan. Look forward to working with her going forward. And for her benefit, my name is Cliff Brown. I'm the chair of the advisory committee, subcommittee on schools, and you have a few other of my colleagues on today: Carolyn Thal, Catherine Florio, and Ben Birnbaum, I think. Our fifth member, Stephen Reeders, is on an airplane going back to England, where he kind of splits his time between here and London. And I have two things that I'd like to bring up, both of which are questions / comments that I've been asked to state on behalf of the subcommittee. The first is a question from Stephen, a comment and a question from Stephen. And I'm just going to read what he requested me to do. I have asked Cliff to communicate these words of mine as I will be on a plane during the meeting. My particular concern is the alleged violation of election law by members of the school staff, which has regrettably contaminated the May 2nd votes on questions 1 and 2. The question I have is whether members of the school committee knew of the use of school facilities and assets to influence voters on these questions. Elections are sacrosanct in this Commonwealth. It can only be assumed people were minded to risk breaking election law because they knew that the result would be very close. If so, it was a cynical decision. It is particularly concerning that town officials were willing to take the risk of a complaint given specific warnings by the town administrator. Stephen Reeders. There is a question in there. I don't know if anyone wants to address it at this particular point. But I'd certainly, on behalf of Stephen and the group, welcome any input or thoughts that the school committee has on the complaint that has been registered with, I guess, the state.
I don't want to get into this too much, but because I don't think this is actually the right forum for it, but and the school committee itself hasn't discussed this, but I would just say that in my opinion, the fundamental timeline of events and decisions as he outlined them is not how I would describe it or agree to how he described it. And second, it's not for the school committee to make that determination. That is a state determination and not the school committee's. And if any other school committee members want to comment beyond that, feel free. Okay. Cliff, your next statement.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mariah. This is a question regarding a line item in the budget book, which has perplexed some of us for a while. So it's really just sort of an explanation. there is a line item on page 75 of the budget book that reads, Newbury School Use, $115,000 to relocate and set up office spaces for the administrative and support staff. And above this line, there is a note that an expectation of use for Newbury would include moving 48, I think the number was 48 staff members over to Newbury from either, I guess, town hall or other facilities around town. And so the question is to have a better understanding of this, because there's some belief that there is no room at Newbury to place administrative staff, given the fact that it's going to be used for peer students. So if anyone could address that, it would really be appreciated.
Linus, are you prepared to respond to that now, or do you want to take that offline, or how do you want to handle that?
I think we can take it offline for the formal answer, but the general thinking, and again, remember the timing aspect of this. Our budget book was prepared in January, and at that time there had been conversations about moving staff certainly out of the Clark Road lease. So this is where those staff would be coming from. And initially the thinking was that schools would have some access to the utilization at Newbury. We still believe that that possibility exists and it wouldn't crowd out the students, but we can get more detailed information for you on that, Cliff.
Okay, thank you.
Cliff, what do you need that information?
Well, I guess ideally we should have it before town meeting, before the budget vote happens. I guess if I'm thinking ahead until we have this information, it's really hard to say. But if in fact people are not being moved to Newbury, and there is not the need for that expense, I guess the question is, or would be, does the budget that people have seen accurately reflect how money is anticipated to be spent next year? Now, you know, as Dr. Guillory said, the budget book came out, version 1 in January, and a lot has transpired since then. I don't recall seeing a second version, so it's a matter of understanding what's happened with that particular line item. The expense and the need for the money, if you will.
Linus, do you want to respond to that? Or Helen also, if you have any comments on that as chair of capital? Linus, do you have any comments, or do you want
No additional, but just capturing the note and understand the importance of the response before town meeting.
Yeah, it's probably better that I look at it, because I do remember that same amount as a CIP amount. And so I'm wondering, I don't know where that may come from.
I have one comment, which is the Clark Road lease is not being renewed. Those people are moving somewhere anyway. So
we'll move it for something.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Cliff, about, like, you know, is it in that exact configuration? Is it that exact dollar amount? I'm not sure that at this moment it's clear, but that they're not staying and that lease is going, that they are not staying because that lease is ending is clear. And I think it would be, I think it's appropriate to make sure that we have the funds to be able to address that move.
I just think, yeah, I just think it'd be helpful for everybody, since this is actually something that's been asked more than once over the last several months, not necessarily this subcommittee, but of staff, for everyone to just understand kind of what's going on with those 48 people and where are they going to go and what would be the expense of setting them up wherever it is that they're going to go.
Thanks, Cliff.
I think there's going to be a number of answers. It's not just one, they're going to.
Okay, well, that information will be helpful, Helen. Thank you.
We still have the chance to end half an hour early. Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate everything, and thank you, Ruth, again for that helpful report. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.